The world around her felt strangely familiar, yet something was different. She opened her eyes, and for a moment everything seemed blurry. The soft glow of the morning sun streamed through the delicate silk curtains, casting patterns of light across the room. Her heart pounded in her chest as she recognized the intricate carvings on the wooden ceiling, the faint scent of jasmine in the air, and the warmth of the bed beneath her. A wave of confusion washed over her, followed by a sharp, suffocating fear. This place, she knew it too well. It was the house she had lived in before everything fell apart. But that was impossible. She had died. She had felt the pain, the cold, the unbearable loneliness of her final moments. Her body had grown weak under years of torment. She remembered the betrayal that had broken her spirit, the cruel hands that had punished her for crimes she had never committed, and the lies that had stolen her happiness. Panic gripped her as she threw aside the soft covers and stumbled toward the mirror. The reflection staring back at her made her breath hitch. It was her face, but younger. Her skin was untouched by the hardships she had endured. Her eyes still held a spark of life instead of the dull emptiness she had known in her last days. Slowly, she raised a trembling hand and touched her cheek, as if testing whether what she was seeing was real. Then it hit her. A flood of memories rushed into her mind, clear and unforgiving. She had lived through this before. She knew what was coming. Her sister, the one she had trusted and loved, had been the mastermind behind her misery. With sweet words and fake kindness, she had stolen her happiness, taken the gentle and loving man who was meant to be her husband, and pushed her into the arms of a monster. Her breathing grew heavy as anger and determination replaced the fear in her heart. She had been weak once, blind to the deception around her, but she was not the same woman anymore. She would not let history repeat itself. This time she would fight back. This time she would take control of her own fate. She had always believed in love, in the warmth of family, in the promises of those closest to her. She had trusted without hesitation, never questioning the sweet words that wrapped around her like a comforting embrace. Her sister had always been by her side, smiling with gentle affection, speaking with a softness that made her feel safe. It was a bond she cherished, a relationship she had never doubted. But beneath that loving mask was a mind filled with deceit. It had all been an illusion, a carefully crafted performance designed to break her piece by piece. Her sister had never loved her. She had envied her, resented her, and in her heart, she had wanted to take everything that belonged to her. It began with whispers, subtle at first, delicate like a spider spinning an invisible web. Their parents had always favored obedience, and her sister played that role perfectly. With soft-spoken words and feigned concern, she planted seeds of doubt in their minds. She spoke of irresponsibility, of childish behavior, of a future that would only bring shame to the family if left in the wrong hands. To her fiancé, she was even more careful. She never spoke ill of her directly, never accused her outright. Instead, she painted herself as the understanding, wise sister who simply worried for his happiness. She would sigh and lower her eyes, allowing just enough sadness to linger in her expression before she would say, "She is kind, but perhaps too naive for someone like you. I only want what is best for you." It was not long before the doubts took root. The once loving gaze of her fiancé became uncertain. His words grew distant, his laughter with her less frequent. Meanwhile, her sister remained ever present, always near, always understanding. And then the final blow came. She remembered the night clearly. The air had been cool, carrying the scent of blooming flowers, but the warmth of that evening had been a cruel contrast to what was about to unfold. She had walked into a conversation she was never meant to hear. Hidden in the shadows as her sister stood before her fiancé, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I would never want to come between you," her sister had said softly. "But I cannot lie to you either. She has been meeting someone else." The words had stolen the breath from her lungs. She wanted to step forward, to deny it, to scream that it was a lie. But she stood frozen as she watched the doubt in his eyes turn to something darker. Anger, betrayal, disgust. From that moment, her fate was sealed. Her parents, convinced that she had dishonored them, had stripped her of any choice. The engagement was broken, her fiancé's love lost forever, and she was cast aside like something unworthy. But the cruelty of fate did not end there. Her sister, victorious in her deception, was given everything she had ever wanted. The man who had once been hers became her sister's husband, and she was handed over to a man she had never desired. A man with power, with influence, but without an ounce of kindness in his heart. She remembered the cold grip of his hand on hers the day of the wedding, the way his eyes held no warmth, only possession. From the moment she stepped into his house, she ceased to be a person in his eyes. She was an object, a trophy, a prisoner in a golden cage. The nights were the worst. He was not a man who loved, only a man who controlled. He questioned her every move, twisted her every word, and punished her for crimes she had never committed. Every moment of kindness was a trick, a test to see if she would slip, and when she did not, he would find new ways to make her suffer. Her sister had not forgotten her either. From afar, she watched with quiet satisfaction, sending little messages of false concern, reminding her that she had no one left to turn to. She was alone, trapped in a life she never chose. The years passed, each one taking a part of her with it. The woman who had once dreamed of love and happiness faded away, replaced by a hollow shell of what she used to be. Until the day came when even her suffering was not enough. She had fallen ill, her body weakened from years of neglect and torment. She remembered lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the silence around her. She had no visitors, no kind words, no hands to hold her as she drifted toward the inevitable. As the darkness crept in, she felt no peace, only regret. Regret that she had not fought back, regret that she had not seen the truth sooner, regret that she had let them win. With the last of her strength, she whispered a silent wish, not for mercy, not for salvation, but for another chance. And then the darkness took her. But fate had been listening. When she opened her eyes again, she was not in that cold room. She was not lying on the bed where she had breathed her last. Instead, she was back in her old home, in a body untouched by time, surrounded by a life that had not yet been destroyed. The wish she had made in her final moments had been granted. She had been reborn. And this time she would not be the victim. The first thing she felt was the steady rhythm of her heartbeat, stronger than it had ever been in her final days. Her body no longer ached, her skin was no longer marked by the weight of suffering, and her heart was no longer drowning in despair. The warmth of the sunlight on her face reminded her that this was real. She had been given another chance. A slow breath escaped her lips as she sat up in bed, her mind racing with the memories of what had happened before. She was no longer the helpless girl who had walked unknowingly into her sister's trap. She was no longer the naive woman who had loved blindly, who had given her trust so easily to those who had only sought to destroy her. This time she would not fall into the same fate. This time she would be the one in control. The first step was to observe, to see how far back she had been sent. The voices from outside her room were familiar, the soft chatter of the maids, the faint laughter of her mother from the garden below, and then, her sister's voice. Sweet, gentle, full of warmth and kindness. But she knew the truth now. That voice was nothing more than a beautifully crafted lie. She schooled her expression into something neutral as she stepped out of her room, walking toward the garden where her family sat enjoying tea. Her mother greeted her with a smile, her father barely looked up from his newspaper, and her sister turned to her with the same affectionate gaze she had always worn. But now she could see it for what it truly was. "You are awake late today," her sister said softly, reaching out as if to adjust a loose strand of her hair. "You should be careful, dear sister. You would not want to appear lazy in front of others." It was such a simple statement, but she knew exactly what it was meant to do. In her past life, she would have laughed it off or maybe even apologized, allowing her sister to paint the image of her as someone careless and irresponsible. But this time, she would not let her words take root. She smiled, meeting her sister's gaze with a calmness that made the other girl's fingers hesitate before retreating. "You are right. I must take care to present myself properly. After all, reputation is everything. It was a small shift, but it was enough. Her sister blinked at her response, as if trying to decipher the meaning behind her words. This was how it would begin. Small changes. Little adjustments that would lead to something greater. She knew that her sister's greatest victory had been turning her fiancé against her. That was the next thing she had to change. In her past life, she had been too timid, too trusting. She had loved him quietly, hoping that her actions would be enough for him to understand her heart. But now she knew better. When they met again, she did not allow herself to be nervous. She met his eyes with confidence, spoke with clarity, and instead of shrinking under his gaze as she once had, she held her ground. He was taken aback at first, as if seeing her for the first time, truly seeing her. She asked him about his interests, not just as a polite courtesy but with genuine curiosity. She challenged his thoughts, shared her own opinions rather than simply agreeing with whatever he said. And he noticed. At first, it was just small moments, an extra second of hesitation before looking away, a slight change in his tone when he spoke to her. Then, it became something more. He sought her out in conversations. He asked for her thoughts. He lingered when he should have left. It was not long before she saw the shift in his eyes, the warmth that had been stolen from her in the past now growing in his gaze. But she was not just winning him over. She was also setting the stage for her sister's downfall. She did not confront her sister directly. That would be foolish. Instead, she let her sister believe she was still the same girl, the same trusting sibling who saw only the best in her. She played the part well, nodding along to her sister's gentle words, smiling at her empty kindness, all while carefully placing the pieces of her plan into motion. Her sister had thrived in the shadows, twisting the truth and planting doubts without ever getting her hands dirty. So she turned the light toward her. She subtly encouraged conversations that made her sister slip, that made her own lies begin to contradict themselves. She let others see the cracks in the perfect image her sister had built. She ensured that whenever her sister tried to make her look bad, it was her own words that betrayed her. Slowly, people started to notice. The looks of admiration her sister once received were now tinged with uncertainty. The trust she had effortlessly gained in the past was now slipping through her fingers. And the fiancé who had once been stolen from her. He was now looking at her, truly looking at her, with a gaze filled with something new. It was only the beginning, but she knew one thing for certain. This time it would be different. Her sister had always been careful, always calculating. Every move she made in the past had been precise, hidden beneath layers of affection and concern. She had never been reckless, never made mistakes that could expose her true nature. That was why she had won so easily before. But this time something was different. This time, the traps she set did not close around their intended prey. This time, every carefully laid plan crumbled before it could even take shape. Began with small things. A missing letter that was supposed to cause a misunderstanding between the protagonist and her fiancé mysteriously found its way back into his hands before her sister could spin her tale of deception. A rumor whispered in hushed tones about the protagonist's supposed carelessness was effortlessly dismissed with undeniable proof of her competence. Every attempt to tarnish her reputation, every whisper meant to cast doubt, all unraveled before they could cause any real harm. The frustration in her sister's eyes was almost imperceptible, hidden behind her usual mask of gentle smiles, but the protagonist saw it. She saw the way her sister's fingers curled ever so slightly when another scheme fell apart, the way her gaze lingered on her longer than before, as if searching for the reason behind this unexpected resistance. Then came the moment she had been waiting for, the moment to strike back. It was not enough to simply avoid her sister's traps. If she wanted to change her fate completely, she needed to ensure that everyone saw the truth. She did not attack directly. That would be too easy for her sister to twist against her. Instead, she set the stage carefully, just as her sister had done in the past. The first step was to expose the lies. She guided conversations in subtle ways, leading their parents to question things they had once accepted without hesitation. She let them hear things they were never meant to hear, small inconsistencies in her sister's stories that made them pause, that made them wonder if perhaps they had been wrong about which daughter was truly at fault. Then, she let her fiancé see the truth for himself. She knew her sister would not give up easily, that she would try to win him over once more, just as she had done before. So when the opportunity came, she made sure he was listening. A carefully placed letter, an innocent invitation, and suddenly, he was witnessing a side of her sister that had always been kept hidden. It was just a few words, a brief moment, but it was enough. He heard the cold calculation in her voice, saw the sharpness in her eyes when she thought no one was watching. And in that moment, the image of the kind and gentle girl he had once believed in shattered completely. His distance from her was subtle at first, but it grew quickly. The warmth that had once been there, the trust, the admiration, it all disappeared. Her sister noticed, and for the first time she was afraid. Desperation made people reckless, and her sister was no exception. With every plan she had so carefully built falling apart around her, she was running out of options. She needed something bigger, something final. So she did what desperate people always did. She tried to destroy her completely. The accusation was cruel, carefully designed to leave no room for doubt. A theft, a betrayal, something so terrible that it would turn even the most sympathetic hearts against her. Her sister wove the story with precision, planting false evidence, gathering witnesses who had been carefully manipulated into believing her words. For a moment, it seemed as if she might succeed. The weight of her words, the careful tears she shed, the trembling voice as she spoke of her pain, it was almost enough to cast a shadow over everything the protagonist had built. But she had been waiting for this. With calm precision, she revealed the truth, piece by piece. She brought forward the real witnesses, the undeniable proof, the one thing her sister had never considered, someone who had once helped her before but had now seen the truth for themselves. And just like that, the carefully crafted story fell apart. But it was not just the lie that was exposed. It was everything. The years of manipulation, the carefully placed schemes, the way she had twisted the truth to suit her own desires. The mask that had hidden her true nature was torn away in front of everyone who had once adored her. The shock in their parents' eyes, the disappointment, the disbelief. The horror on the face of the fiancé who had once trusted her so completely. The whispers of those around them, the quiet murmurs of realization. And in the midst of it all, her sister stood frozen, unable to deny it, unable to escape the consequences of her own making. For the first time, the one who had always controlled everything had lost. And she knew it. She had almost forgotten the sound of his voice. Almost. It was deeper than she remembered, rougher, but still carried that same commanding arrogance. The kind that expected obedience, that demanded submission. But she was no longer the woman who had once cowered before him. She was no longer the wife who had spent years suffering under his cruelty. She turned slowly, her eyes meeting his without a trace of fear. There he stood, just as imposing as ever, dressed in the finest clothing, his expression unreadable. But she knew him too well. Beneath that carefully maintained exterior there was greed, possessiveness. He had always viewed her as something he owned, something he could control. And now he had come to reclaim her. "You look different," he said, his gaze sweeping over her, assessing. "More confident." She did not answer, did not give him the satisfaction of a reaction. "Rumors travel fast," he continued, taking a slow step closer. "I hear you have captured the attention of many. It is impressive, truly. But do not forget you were once mine." There it was. Claim. As if she was an object, a possession he had let go of but now wished to retrieve. She tilted her head slightly, studying him the way one might study something insignificant. "I was never yours," she said evenly. "You took what did not belong to you. And now, you will take nothing from me ever again." His expression darkened, his jaw tightening at her defiance. "You forget yourself. You forget who I am." "No," she said softly, stepping closer, her voice steady. "I remember exactly who you are. A man who thought power gave him the right to do as he pleased. A man who used his strength to break others because he had nothing else. A man who could only control those too weak to fight back. She paused, letting her words settle. But I am not weak anymore. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Hesitation. He was used to the woman she had been before, the one who had tried to please him, who had endured his anger in silence, who had accepted cruelty as if it were her fate. But this was different. This was new. And he did not know how to handle it. You think you can stand against me? He scoffed, trying to regain his dominance. You are nothing on your own. She smiled then, a slow, knowing smile. That is where you are wrong. He had no idea what she had been doing, how carefully she had prepared for this moment. She had spent weeks gathering information, learning his weaknesses, understanding the power he held and where it could be broken. He had always been untouchable before, protected by his wealth and influence. But no man was truly invincible. You have many secrets, she continued, her voice light, almost amused. You hid them well before, but power makes men careless. And now, all of your sins are in plain sight. His eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? She stepped even closer, so that only he could hear her next words. The debts, the bribes, the affairs, the corruption. She let each word sink in. It is all exposed now. He stiffened, his expression unreadable, but she saw the flicker of panic beneath the surface. Impossible, he hissed. You have nothing. You are welcome to believe that, she said with a shrug. But soon everyone will know. The contracts you manipulated, the people you threatened, the deals you made in the shadows, they will all come to light. He reached for her then, his hand tightening around her wrist, but she did not flinch. She simply met his gaze, unshaken. Let me go, she said calmly. For a moment he hesitated. Then, slowly, he released her, his fingers trembling slightly. He took a step back. This is the last time you will ever try to control me. You have already lost, and you do not even realize it yet. And then, as if on cue, the doors behind them opened. The sound of approaching footsteps filled the space, followed by the murmurs of several voices. His downfall had arrived. The officials stepped forward, their faces grim, their purpose clear. You are under investigation, one of them announced, his voice leaving no room for argument. You will come with us now. The ex-husband turned to her, rage burning in his eyes. You think you have won. She smiled once more, but there was no kindness in it. Only certainty. I know I have. As they took him away, as his shouts filled the air, she felt nothing but relief. Not fear, not guilt, just the overwhelming weight of freedom. She had taken back her life, and she would never let anyone steal it from her again. The day of her wedding was nothing like the last time. In her past life, she had stood before a man she feared, her heart weighed down by betrayal and sorrow. But now, as she walked toward the man who had chosen her, who had truly seen her for who she was, there was nothing but lightness in her heart. He stood waiting for her, his expression filled with something she had never seen directed at her before. Pure, unwavering love. Had not been easy. Winning his heart had not been about deception or trickery, but about showing him the truth of who she was. And he had seen it. You look beautiful, he whispered as she reached him. She smiled, warmth filling her chest. And you look nervous. He laughed softly, shaking his head. Not nervous, just amazed. I almost lost you before I even realized what you meant to me. But you did not lose me, she said gently. And you never will. The ceremony passed in a blur of joy and whispered promises, and when it was over, she found herself exactly where she was meant to be, beside the man who had once been stolen from her but was now truly hers. As they walked together through the garden after the celebrations, hand in hand, he turned to her with a thoughtful expression. You never told me what changed. She glanced up at him. What do you mean? You are different from the woman I first met, he said. Stronger. Wiser. It is as if you already knew everything that was coming. For a moment, she considered telling him the truth, that she had lived this life once before, that she had seen how it had all ended in tragedy. But in the end she simply smiled. Perhaps I just learned to see people for who they really are. His hand tightened around hers. I am grateful for that. Because now I finally see you too. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, her sister's world was crumbling. The same people who had once adored her now whispered about her in hushed tones. Their admiration turned to scorn. The carefully crafted image she had built for herself had shattered beyond repair. The gentle fiancé she had once stolen now wanted nothing to do with her. His eyes, once filled with admiration, now only held disappointment. He had seen her true nature, and there was no undoing it. Her parents, too, had begun to turn away. Though they had once believed her innocent, they could no longer ignore the truth. The shame of what she had done weighed heavily on them, and for the first time, they did not rush to defend her. But the true punishment had yet to come. In a cruel twist of fate, the very same man she had once pushed her sister toward, the cruel, ruthless husband, had now set his sights on her. Perhaps it was her desperation to salvage what was left of her future, or perhaps it was the pressure of losing everything else, but when the arrangement was made, she had no choice but to accept. The irony was not lost on anyone. The man she had once ensured her sister would marry was now hers to endure. And unlike her sister, she had no one left to save her. As the protagonist stood on the balcony of her new home, looking out at the sunset, she felt no guilt, no pity. Her sister had once orchestrated her suffering with careful hands, believing herself untouchable. But in the end, fate had a way of balancing the scales. And as she turned to go inside, to the husband who cherished her and the life that was finally her own, she knew one thing for certain. This time she had won. As she sat by the window, watching the golden light of the setting sun, she let out a slow breath. The past felt like a distant nightmare now, one that no longer had power over her. She had walked through fire, but she had not been consumed by it. Instead, she had emerged stronger, wiser, and finally free. Her journey had been one of pain and betrayal, of loss and heartbreak. But in the end, it had also been one of redemption. She had been given a second chance, an opportunity to rewrite her fate, and she had taken it with both hands. She thought of the woman she had once been, naive, trusting, blind to the schemes unfolding around her. That woman had suffered, had cried herself to sleep night after night, had endured cruelty without ever understanding why. And in the end, that woman had died alone, cursing the world that had been so unfair to her. But she was not that woman anymore. This time, she had not let herself be silenced. She had fought back. She had used her knowledge, her intelligence, and her determination to carve out the life that had once been stolen from her. She had refused to be a victim. And justice had been served. Her sister, the one who had so carefully orchestrated her misery, had fallen into her own trap. The man who had once controlled her with cruelty and power had lost everything. And she had won her freedom, her happiness, and the love that had once slipped through her fingers. She turned her head slightly, feeling the warmth of her husband's presence as he approached. He did not need to speak for her to feel the depth of his love. It was in the way he reached for her hand, in the way he looked at her, in the quiet moments they shared together. "You seem deep in thought," he murmured, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. She smiled, squeezing his hand. "I was just thinking about how different everything could have been." His expression grew thoughtful. "Do you regret anything?" She shook her head. "Not anymore. I would not trade this life for anything." And she meant it. Because everything that had happened, all the pain, all the betrayal had led her here. To this moment. To the love and happiness she had always deserved. Fate had given her a second chance. But it had been her choices, her strength, and her determination that had shaped this ending. She hoped that whoever heard her story, whoever faced their own trials and betrayals, would remember this. One should never let others decide their fate. One should never allow cruelty to go unchallenged. And most of all, no matter how dark the night may seem, there is always a way to change one's destiny. She had done it. And so could anyone who dared to fight for what was rightfully theirs.